r/ProRevenge. Posted by user, Cordero Biggs. Fiance left me due to my cancer diagnosis. I left her destitute. It has been 4 years, so the sting is gone and my revenge has been had. Sorry if this isn't the right forum. We dated for 4 years and had what I thought was a great relationship. We were both well-established professionals, who both owned homes in the same neighborhood, and both with daughters in the home. Her daughter was 11, and mine was 16 when we met. We had actually planned to get married, build a house, and raise the two together. We planned the house build because she had recently been diagnosed with a neurological disease that would eventually put her in a wheelchair, and need something ADA-friendly. During the planning stages, I began doing landscape and construction projects on her home to increase the resale value. All in, I invested roughly $30,000 USD into the home, running everything through my side construction business for tax, permitting, and resale purposes. We had a contract that payment would be made upon the sale of the home. I produced invoices for each and every project, but never pushed for payment because of the prior agreement. Fast forward 6 months, we're looking at property to develop, and finalizing drawings on the home when I began feeling ill. I couldn't eat, constantly vomiting and passing blood. I began noticing that my abdomen looked swollen, which was odd, because we were both very clean eaters, and were in the gym every day. So I went to the doctor and began having tests done. During this time, she began having small cognitive issues, and the stress of her current position was exacerbating her condition, so she took a $20,000 per annum cut in pay, along with a lesser position inside the company. After a month or so of different tests, and a biopsy, it came back that I had a golf ball-sized tumor in my stomach, and would need to begin chemotherapy. So I began chemo and radiation treatments, which made me, expectedly so, extremely ill. She was spending time helping around my place on the weekends, and staying over more, to the point that they were both at my home, more than theirs. At this point, I suggested that we go ahead, and put one of our houses on the market, and move in together until the new house was built. I have great supplemental insurance, as well as a long-term illness plan, so using that, coupled with the sale of one of our houses, would push us through comfortably, and help ease the financial stress on her. Shortly after this discussion, she became extremely distant. Her daughter wasn't coming down, and hanging out with mine anymore. She had excuses for not getting together. She quit driving me to treatments and stopped staying over. She then dropped a bomb. A sentence that will forever be burned into my psyche: I love you, but I can't see myself taking care of someone this sick in the long term, and I don't think we should see each other any longer. In a text. It broke me. I won't lie. This was the first woman I had ever opened up to, and planned a life with, since my wife died when my children were 1 and 3. However, I tried to be mature about it. I forced myself to understand her position and to accept what I could not change. I calmly, the next day, gathered all of her things, packed them neatly, loaded them in my truck, and took them to her house to leave on the back porch while she was at work, in order to avoid any awkward exchanges. Walking around the back, and under the porch cover, I sat down a box, and saw her in her back living room, on the couch having intimacy with a man that she had introduced to me, as a lifelong friend. I had dinner and drinks with this man and his girlfriend. We had gone on vacation with them, as well. I never spoke of the incident with her, and simply sent her a text later, explaining that I would leave her things on my side porch to pick up at her convenience. I discovered 8 or 9 months later, from his now ex-girlfriend, that they had broken up, due to him confessing that he had been sleeping with my SO, dating back to about the time we were finishing drawings on the new home. Now I'm pissed. Revenge time. At this point, I had finished chemo and radiation for the time being, and was feeling healthier. I was going through some much neglected paperwork, when I ran across the file that contained $32,680 in unpaid, long overdue invoices, which were promptly sent to my attorney, to begin lien proceedings on the home. It turns out that I couldn't have done this a moment too soon, because she was set to put her house on the market, Coupled with interest over the course of, what was then, 19 months overdue, the invoices were hefty. That, along with the agreement of settling them, when the house was sold and attorney fees, left her with roughly $10,000 after the sale of the home, and settling her current mortgage. She promptly had to back out of the purchase of another home and moved in with her oldest daughter, Sil, and 2 grandchildren. She also had to leave her job and begin receiving disability. I ran into her a little over a year ago, and she looked as if she had aged 20 years, and was in the wheelchair we had talked about. We chatted cordially but briefly, and I excused myself, and went on with my day. A few days later, her younger daughter called me, and spoke of my running into her mom, and could we hang out sometime. I gave a vague answer, thanked her for calling and again, went on with my day. The ex then called me a week or so later, and began apologizing for leaving me as she did. Again, cordial but short, I thanked her for calling and hung up. She began texting, and this went on for several weeks until she asked if I could ever see us rekindling what we had, to which I replied, I can't see myself taking care of someone so sick in the long term. Remember the box on your back porch? Did you think that, lifelong friend, brought that over to you from my house? Good luck to you. Goodbye. TLDR, girlfriend broke up with me due to me having cancer, so I ruined the sale of her home, the purchase of another, and left her to have to move in with her daughter. Then threw her breakup line back at her. I sometimes feel guilt over this, but not much, and not often. Posted by user, JakeXDX. How my dad, conned a con man, then ruined his conning business. Years ago, shortly after I moved out, my dad decided he wanted to remodel his bathroom, and hired a local contractor who I will refer to as DB, to do it. He fixed a clogged sink for him once. From the start, my dad was extremely skeptical of contractors, and did not want to get scammed, so after they agreed on the price for labor, my dad asked him for an invoice for the cost of all the materials. He took said invoice to one of his coworkers, whose bill was a plumber, or in construction, or something, to look over the list of materials, and see if the quote was fair, and right off the bat, DB was trying to do close to a 50% markup on the materials. So instead of paying DB's invoice, my dad just bought all the materials himself, saying he knows a guy who gives him amazing discounts, so DB doesn't get suspicious that my dad was onto his game. After 3 months, the bathroom is not close to being done, despite DB telling him it would take 2 months. My dad had to travel for work, and would be gone a week, so he asked me to house sit / make sure DB shows up to work, and does not steal shit. Right off the bat, DB tries to be all buddy-buddy with me, but I did not like the guy, and just brushed him off, asking how the bathroom was coming. Over the course of the week, DB tried to upsell me on a bunch of things he said needed to be done, to finish the bathroom. Most of it was electrical work, which he did not have a license for. My dad filled me in before he left about what was quoted in the labor, and there was no electrical work quoted, and I told him no, just stick to the original quote. Once my dad comes back, I filled him in on all the additional charges DB tried to tack on. He also did not show up for 3 days, saying he hurt his shoulder, tripping over his cat. Then he tried to install the new ceiling light, which he was not asked to install, because we had an electrician coming to install it. After a heated discussion between DB and I, he stopped installing the ceiling light, and started laying tile, during which he broke a quarter of the tiles. After this debacle, my dad did some investigating, and looked up DB's license, and found out that not only was the license expired, it did not belong to DB. So my dad asked my brother and I to come over, where he was going to confront DB, about lying about his license. A very heated argument broke out, when my dad refused to let DB to enter the house to collect his tool, and said we would bring the tools out to him. DB then threatened to press charges against me for assault when I accidentally brushed his shoulder, when I was passing him in the hallway, and I refused to apologize. After the cops showed up, DB quickly tried to play the victim, but the cops told DB to collect his tools and leave. The bathroom was still unfinished, but my dad did not have to pay DB, for his 3 months of labor, and used that money to hire real contractors to finish the bathroom. It only took them a week and a half to finish. After this, my dad contacted the local news to tell them about DB being a conman. A few months later, the news did an investigation story about him, and they found other people DB scammed, where DB would start to work on their bathroom, but once he got paid he would cut and run, leaving the bathroom unfinished, and stealing all the materials. The news then set up a sting for DB, and exposed him for being a conman, and he was arrested not long after the news story aired. TLDR, bad man hired to redo dad's bathroom, tries to rip dad off, dad fires bad man for lack of licenses, and for being an asshole. Dad tells local news about the bad man, local news exposes the bad man was eventually arrested. Posted by user, deleted. Group attempted to cut me out after I did about 60% of the work. They failed. This happened about 12 years ago, while I was studying aeronautical engineering. Due to some money-grubbing legislation tactics, most who have gone to college know about the unnecessary courses that are tacked onto the degrees in order to graduate. One of those courses for my degree was a business class. Seriously, you'd think these guys would understand that most engineers don't do the business side of things. Thankfully, we had a teacher who was understanding of the fact that many of us in the class were bored out of our minds. I'll admit to having always been a geek/nerd, who loved making good grades. If I don't understand something, I run at it hard to try to change that. This class stumped me for quite some time, and then a nightmare of a project was announced, one worth 50% of our grades. The school was a small one, the class a little more than 30 people, and I was assigned to work with 3 people I knew from other classes. We had problems straight away. 2 of the people remembered me from a calculus class that they barely passed, as the person who sailed easily through, and decided to dump their portion of the work on me straight away, knowing I wouldn't allow myself to fail. They were right. At first my other group member tried to pick up the slack as well, pulling hard to do a difficult project in a subject we barely understood. I'll admit she was a trooper. Unfortunately, she was also someone easily manipulated, and our 2 slacking group members began applying pressure during the semester for her to take the work, and allow them to present it. The day of the project finally comes, and I'm sick as a dog, pretty much quarantined in the clinic due to bronchitis. I managed to send a message to the teacher. The 2 slackers managed to wrangle the presentation from the girl who worked with me, and presented it to the class, declaring that they had done all of the work, and I was skipping class, because they had told me that they were going to tell the teacher what happened. My initial grade was an F. I was beyond pissed, until I realized something important. Part of the project involved a written report, of which I held the only copy, since I was the one to type it up. Cue the revenge. Privately I went to the teacher with my notes, and the report in order to get the grade I earned, and to get him in on the plot. He agreed since it seemed fun, and he planned to fail them anyway, for academic dishonesty. Publicly, there was no report. The classmates that had attempted to take all the credit, began to approach me, first demanding the report. Most of the time, my response was, "But I didn't do any work," in a sickly sweet voice. Next they attempted to act all buddy-buddy, trying to convince me that it had all been a joke, and promising that they'd tell the professor that I had done some work, giving me some credit so that I had the possibility to pass. This was met with stony silence on most occasions, before I told them that I'd rather fail than let them pass. Things escalated after that, to include the door of my dorm room being rapped on at odd hours of the night, shoving, and them stealing my backpack and notebooks, in order to try to find the report themselves. One of them even asked my roommate to let them search for a report I had written, and forgotten for our group, didn't have her as my roommate the following semester. Things finally came to a head on the last week of classes. I had held out on them for a month, not telling any of my groupmates what I had done, and enough time had elapsed that even if they were to turn in the report now, it would be so late that they'd still have failed. They hadn't even attempted to do the report themselves, and the girl who had worked with me was in hysterics over the very real possibility of failing the class. It was what the teacher, and I, had been waiting for, and he finally decided to return the reports. The two slackers glared daggers at me, as the teacher returned the report of every other group in the class, before stopping in front of them. He was holding what looked to be one extra report, and they were immediately looking hopeful. He set a single sheet of paper on one of their desks before moving to the desk of the girl who had worked along with me, and set the report on her desk. "I had to dock some points for dishonesty, but you and your partner did decently," he stated before moving on. My partner realized what I had done. We only got an 82 on our project, but it was far better than the 0 that our ex-group mates received. I had been carefully documenting the harassment that the two slackers had put me through, and ensured several witnesses saw some of what they did. 2 days after being informed that they were failing, the pair had a new problem. I gave the evidence to the administration of our school, and the teacher reported the academic dishonesty. The administration did a bit more digging, and found that the pair had been making trouble for some time, and a number of students reported similar problems of having their work stolen. The slackers were expelled. If you liked these stories, hit that like button, and leave a comment below. You can upvote these stories by pressing the links in the description. If you want to hear more stories from me, hit the subscribe button, and press the bell icon to be alerted when a new video is posted.